Good morning, everyone. We'll start internationally today. In the United States, they are adopting the bad policy of renting hotel rooms for illegal migrants or people jumping over the border or whatever you want to call them. But Jason Miller says, he's a blue checkmark guy, he says $86 million for hotel rooms to house illegal immigrants. Scoop, ICE securing hotel rooms to hold growing number of migrant families. So when I said Biden was a lot like Justin Trudeau, his policies are a lot like Justin Trudeau's. He's funding the PR campaign for COVID-19 to be scary and evil, scary and present, right? Ever present. Could get you at any corner, right? Any turn after 8 o'clock, right? So got to go for a curfew. And it knows when you're dancing, so you can't do that. It's very smart virus. Knows if you're standing, not if you're sitting. Knows if you're eating, right? It won't get you if you're eating. Oh, that guy's eating. I'll just carry on. Very smart virus. Very smart virus. But anyway, moving on. Canada was ranked 5th. What changed in 2015? What changed? Canada ranks 15th in latest World Happiness Report. Pierre Poilievre was making a lot of political hay out of the happiness index that was released. I don't think I've ever seen so much political hay attempted to be made out of a happiness index. But here's like a more official report, I guess, saying the same thing. Canadians are not as happy as they once were. I wonder why that is. Like, why aren't you happy? We locked you in your homes. We removed your job. We removed your ability to make money. We removed your ability to run your business. Why aren't you happy? Be happy, Canadians. Why aren't you happy? We don't understand. What happened? Says Senator Linda Frum. What changed? Everybody got locked in their homes when they committed no crime? I don't know, just speculating. Just one of those things. Critical race theory. I've been talking about critical race theory a lot. We're going to get into COVID. We're going to get into spending. We're going to get into the speech that I watched yesterday. There was something buried in the middle of this speech, and I'll play it for you today, that I thought my eyebrows raised. I was like, that's weird that there's no media about this at all. Anyway, critical race theory is something that I've been talking about a lot. And apparently the Queen is set to appoint a diversity czar to modernize the monarchy. A diversity czar? Isn't that Meghan? Is that joke in bad taste? We were having a conversation yesterday. I went to my family's house for dinner, my parents' house, and we were having a conversation around the dinner table. And I had read that Meghan Markle was 25% a different race. And I don't know what other race it was, but 25% this other race. Hence the conversations that were cited by Meghan Markle in the Oprah interview. Okay, so I haven't actually watched the Oprah interview, but that's what she said, and she was saying that there was concerns about the skin color of her son and blah 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 blah. And I think that is a very interesting thing to appoint with regards to a monarchy. Monarchy is like family, right? It's the whole line of succession, and diversity is who you bring into the family. It was a bit tongue in cheek when I said, "Isn't that Meghan?" But like that's how you diversify your family. If you want diversity, then okay, you took a tentative step with Miss Markle, and now you have a grandson and a diversity czar. James Lindsay says, so much for that. Goodbye to your culture. Say goodbye to your culture, Brits. He says that in German first and then in English. Yeah. Critical race theory does nothing but destroy. Here is an example of this. I thought this was just funny. Personal trainers are Nazis. Thinness is white supremacy, says morbidly obese woman at college speaking gig. This is April 24th, 2019. Oh, how far we've come, right? Hasn't critical race theory fixed everything? This guy says tiki torches are racist. This is a Canadian politician coming home a little bit. I thought, tiki torches? Thomas Dang says, this Monday I'll be putting forward a motion to call on the UCP to take action against hateful and threatening imagery like tiki torches in Alberta. After the rise in horrific hate crimes against racialized people, we all need to stand together and act. Recently, the anti-Asian thing took off in the States, right? Did you see Kamala Harris the other day talking about the anti-Asian racism, right? And this is in line with that. This is the same push as that. The goal is the same. They're using a different vehicle, anti-Asian racism, okay? But the push is the same. What they want is more control over speech, more reparations for people who feel slighted. He says you shouldn't feel uncomfortable or threatened. But it depends on if you're telling yourself to feel threatened. If you sit in a dark room and turn on a horror movie, right, at night at 2 o'clock in the morning, don't be surprised when you're afraid about things. If you constantly feed yourself a diet of everybody's talking shit about me and everybody hates me because of my race, I mean, don't be surprised when you make it manifest in real life. Tiki torches?
One. I just held a press conference where we're talking about banning the use of hateful images and hateful symbols like tiki torches, like Confederate flags here in Alberta, because this is something we cannot stand for. People cannot feel intimidated, they cannot feel threatened, they cannot feel not unsafe in their communities. So I'm calling on Jason Kenney, I'm calling on the UCP to also stand with us and start a bipartisan committee to stand with us and bring in legislation that will protect racialized Canadians and racialized Albertans. So
he wants legislation to protect people against those evil tiki torches and the Confederate flags. Which Confederate flag is he talking about? The Canada flag? Is he talking about the maple leaf? Is that Confederate flag evil for him? Or is he talking about the U.S. Confederate flag? Is the U.S. Confederate flag a big deal in Calgary? Is that something that a lot of people drive around with? I had missed that. If that's something that is being referenced that I've missed. But if everybody doesn't understand that Canada is a confederation, we've got a really big problem here with the education system. Okay, here is something that I noticed moving into COVID, because COVID. We're going to get to the protests too. There's lots of protests yesterday, but that's all entwined with COVID, right? Like the protests wouldn't need to happen if politicians were reasonable and not grounding us to our homes, putting us in prison for no crime to keep us safe, comrade, right? Trish Wood says, critical thread. 1, the official slogan of Ontario's latest COVID fear campaign. Pay attention to this, because this is flatten the curve. This is the next little while of rhetoric, right? And sometimes when you point out the rhetoric, they change the rhetoric. If it's not hitting, if it doesn't work, then they'll try a new phrase in the next cycle. They'll try 2 or 3 new phrases, right, and see what sticks. But this one seemed to stick, so they started to go with it. We'll see how long that lasts. Anyway, the new COVID patients are younger and sicker. Coordination and lockdowns now using exactly the frame, lockdowners now using exactly the same phrase as if coordinated. How odd. More vague assertions, no data. And I'll show you in the media. Shocking. The media says we only have anecdotal data, which is just stories people tell. Data. Yeah, we just have anecdotal data to report this, but younger and sicker, in their 30s and maybe 20s. It started when OST, Ontario Science Table, and Public Health PH began pushing stricter lockdowns and even curfews. Now it's everywhere. Toronto Star has a quote from Dr. Samir Masood, quote, little bit younger and seem a little bit sicker despite being otherwise healthy. And there's a link to the Star. Same Star article, the reporter adds another Y and S flourish with this. Some doctors are reporting more patients who seem younger and sicker arriving into hospital. Seem? How young? How sick? How many? Good questions, Trish. Meanwhile, over in the east end of Toronto, CBC got Dr. Lisa Salomon on record with this. Quote, they're younger, said Salomon. They're sicker. Is this a phrase they teach you in med school? For Public Health's new approach is to terrify young people, a strategy totally not born out by actual data and underpinned by politics. Look at the headline. Ontario's third wave could hit younger adults harder. I'll show you this article, I think. We reported last week that Exeter's study that terrifies them of the variant in question did not adjust for comorbidities, neither did the Nature study. It would be great if they would explain how that works. Instead, we got their mantra, younger and sicker, risk of mortality in patients infected with SARS-CoV-2. Hold on, let's see. I didn't see where the younger and sicker is there, and I've got to load this thread, so hold on. This link was basically just saying that this report backs up what the other reports were saying, younger and sicker. It doesn't actually say younger and sicker, though, not clearly. Anyway, number 6. Massachusetts and Florida had no deathly bumps from this variant, and traditionally when viruses mutate, like COVID-19 did to B117, it sounds like a Star Wars name, it becomes less lethal. Decades of virology are being tossed out the window to support a new fear campaign. 7. Brilliant human genome scientist Kevin McKernan is skeptical of the B117 narrative, its lethality, and the testing they used to find it. Please listen on Trish Wood is Critical. And that's a podcast that she does. So interesting stuff. Here is the Ontario's third wave could hit younger adults harder. Could. could. Okay, and here's the part in question. There's also growing concern that anecdotal evidence of recent serious infection skewing towards younger adults is a harbinger of a difficult stretch to come, one that may upend persistent notions of COVID-19 typically only being a grave illness for the elderly. It's speculation. This was the article referenced in 2 other articles that I was reading from the CBC about younger and sicker. Oh no, they're going to be younger and sicker. This was the only reference to a medical anything or data anything that I could find, and it's anecdotal. Anecdotal means evidence in the form of stories that people tell about what happened to them, right? The most anecdotal stories of people under 60 who get COVID-19 are, I had to take 2 weeks off work and then I went back to work. Like, it's not like all of my family died. That's not happening. It's not happening. Robin Nelson says, this is what our government is doing to human beings. This is from Facebook. And I lost my mouse, so that's weird. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Found it. Here it is. Okay, so this is from Newmarket. I'm going to read this. This is difficult because this goes again to bad policy, right? This isn't helping people. This isn't saving people. This is just imprisoning elderly people until they die, warehousing people until they die, and this is awful. Okay, tell me what you think. This is from Facebook. I'm an 83-year-old male resident at South Lake Residential Care Village in Newmarket since 2019. The reason for this write-up is because as long as I'm still sane and still know what is happening around me, I feel that I must speak, not only for myself, but also for my fellow mates, the elderly that live all over Ontario who are in the same frame of mind and the same predicament I am. Please bear in mind that what I am writing about is not how we are being treated by the home's management, but how the ministry is dictating the management, how to treat us and to leave us without dignity. The homes have no choice but to follow orders. The nurses, PSW, cleaning staff, maintenance, and other members of the village working staff work very hard and put lots of working hours to keep this place going, most of them working double shifts. Way to go, staff. Keep up the good work, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you all. Now let's move on and talk about what I have to say. Let me remind you that it's not enough just being alive. We need better quality of life. I borrowed this quote from somewhere but can't remember from where. I think it's from the ministry. We have been under quarantine for months and months, not just to our home but to our rooms, each one of us locked up in a room alone, supposedly because of COVID-19. That's how we are living at the village. We cannot leave the room and go for a walk in the hallway. I think it is pure control now. So now let's see what's going on in the outside world. People that are living outside of our home are allowed to go shopping, go for a walk, live in their own homes, and all they have to do is wear a mask, and yet we are provided with masks and protective clothing and cannot go for a walk in a deserted hallway. Now let's talk about the showering. I have not had one shower for months and months. Yes, we get a sponge bath, big deal. Why? Because according to the ministry, the shower has to be disinfected after every shower. So let me ask you people at home, every time a family member has a shower, do you disinfect your showers? Or even so, how often do you disinfect your shower at home? What is happening with our ministry? Why are they treating us like this? We have people passing away without saying their goodbyes to their friends after they die. I don't know how they would say goodbye to their friends after they die, but like maybe grieving, like saying goodbye to the person who died. Okay, got it. Please help me get out of my room, and please help me have a shower, even if it's once a week, please. And do not give me that if you don't like it, go to your own home. It's not acceptable. Now, I don't have a reference for where this came from. This could be written by anybody, so take it with a grain of salt. But if even half of that is true, and the ministry regulations, I'm going to have to look into ministry regulations regarding the showering and stuff. I have some friends who work in old age homes, so I can find that out pretty quickly. That's not dignified. That's not a dignified way to live, and the excuses aren't good enough, right? Sponge baths, etc. Sometimes you need a shower, man. Sometimes you need a shower. So that's pretty terrible. And the way we are treating our elderly is not great. Here is a letter from Mark Friesen to Scott Moe. Scott Moe is the Premier of Saskatchewan. And Scott Moe asked for, if you don't like what's going on, please send me an email. I'm listening, etc., etc. Mark put together a long 4-page letter cited with links and information regarding testing and regarding all sorts of pretty much what we talk about on the show. What I talk about, talking about the high cycles of PCR testing and the concerns that are being brought up with a lot of the COVID-19 overreach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Scott Moe responds with basically the boilerplate response, right? COVID-19 remains a public health risk in Saskatchewan despite a recent decline in the number of cases and hospitalizations. We continue to urge everyone in the province to follow public health orders and take the necessary precautions to control the spread of the virus. So what I wanted to say with this is past letter writing now. We need to be filing lawsuits. The letter writing, and this wasn't written, this was written March 2nd. We are getting very clear indications from people in charge, including premiers like Scott Moe, that regardless of the letters we write, they're being told, or they are deciding to follow public health blindly and implement exactly what public health says. And public health is unelected and unaccountable. And so if their number one concern is your health, that can't be true. That can't be true because the damage they're doing is unbelievable, is jaw-droppingly impactful. They're creating a situation that is worse than the Great Depression in ways that are difficult to measure. So it's not easy to measure the Great Depression against what's happening right now, but they're creating a situation where the healthcare, the lack of care being given to elderly, the locking people in their rooms in long-term care situations, and that's not just elderly, that's people who are just living in long-term care because we don't have the facilities in Ontario or Canada to maintain these people, as well locking healthy people in their homes, creating a situation where the hospitals are short-staffed because they're sending healthy people home. This is a disaster. It's a self-made disaster that is absolutely worse than the Great Depression, but it's not apples to apples, easy to measure. Because in the Great Depression, it was what, a financial collapse? I can't quantify it necessarily. It was pigeonholed, I suppose, over 70 years of history and more, right? So almost 100 years of history. So to try and drill down to like the health effects of being poor and the health effects of being hungry and living in Hoovervilles and things like that is difficult to bring to modern times. But the catastrophe is just as palpable. It's just as big, if not bigger. I think it's bigger. I think it's a lot bigger. So, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the right way to deal with it, right? Who knows? I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that to look at all the data and say, yes, but our public health and our government has worked hard, right, to strike the right balance. He says our government has worked hard to strike the right balance between protecting public health while allowing people as much freedom as possible to work and socialize. We live in a free society. For your safety is not a good enough excuse. And yet our premiers are saying, oh, we worked hard to make sure that you got as much freedom as we could allow you safely, right? While significant restrictions remain in place for now, Saskatchewan has managed to keep more businesses open than any other jurisdiction in Canada. Maybe so. But what about the rest of us? What about the people in Toronto, right? Sucks for them, and let's ignore it until it gets here? Speak out. Speak out about how awful this response has been. Here is a doctor saying they're questioning the reopening, and there's no data to back up what they're saying here, but they're questioning the reopening. And this guy says, with the province opening up indoor dining to more people, I've decided to go into the restaurant business. Ventilators for every patron. Come for the steak, stay for the in-house ICU team. This guy is supposed to be a doctor, emergency physician in Toronto, co-founder of Conquer COVID-19. Oh, he's totally bipartisan. He just wants your health and safety, except he makes a lot of money, right? Somehow through this COVID-19 thing, I'm sure, right? And he says, but seriously, going out, and here's his little meme with his bar and grill with his PPE people sitting around and eating. He says, but seriously, going out to a crowded restaurant is a really bad idea. Even if the government allows something, doesn't mean it's wise to do it. So if the government allows public officers of health to lock people down, it's not wise for them to do it. I agree with you, doctor. Anyway, he says, order lots of takeout to support businesses, but please don't expose yourself right when vaccinations are kicking into high gear. Any excuse to kick the can down the road, right? Here it is. My colleagues and I are seeing many, many younger people with severe COVID down to their 30s. These variants are a different beast. And even if you're young, it may not spare you and loved ones from a lot of grief. What was safe to do before is simply not so anymore. I don't believe you. You don't have any credibility. You don't have any data to back it up. You just sit here spinning fear. right? Spinning fear. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. These people should be ashamed of themselves. Here's another one. Dr. Andrew Morris said the Ontario government's decision to significantly increase restaurants' indoor capacity in 2 zones of its color-coded pandemic response system at this time is baffling. They weren't using the color-coded system anyway. They were changing the rules daily as they saw fit anyway. So what does it matter? Here's maybe a reason why they did what they did. Toronto Sun, Anthony Fury reporting. It's not about science. Lobbying clearly works to change pandemic restrictions. A couple of weeks ago, Cardinal Thomas Collins, the influential Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Toronto, called on the Ontario government to revise its capacity rules for places of worship. This makes no sense, Cardinal Collins wrote, in reference to the rules governing Toronto and Peel region that capped attendance at 10 persons regardless of the size of the facility. He pointed out how the 10-person limit applies to his own St. Michael's Cathedral, despite the fact that grand facility can hold 1,500 persons. And yet, nearby liquor stores are much smaller, but can welcome more than 10 customers. Very interesting. Eh? The Archdiocese went so far as to create a petition that encouraged not just its own parishioners to sign, but those of other faith groups. It wasn't the first time a petition had been created to critique a particular pandemic restriction. There have been dozens focused on schools, sports, fitness, restaurants, and more. Normally, though, officials don't even acknowledge these petitions, even the ones that generate thousands of signatures. On the rare occasion when they do, they usually offer boilerplate lines about how, while they'd love to have more things open, they have to follow the science, etc. But a funny thing happened this time around. Collins released his letter and it gained considerable media attention. It worked. A few days later, Ontario revised the rules to move them from the arbitrary 10-person capacity to allow 15% of capacity, which is exactly what Cardinal Collins had asked. This tells us something that's both very obvious but also very overlooked. Lobbying works. Public health officials like to make people think that the various restrictions we live under came about by some very hard and difficult science, where they all put their lab coats on and rub their temples while measuring liquids in glass beakers and running numbers on supercomputers. Nonsense. They're relatively arbitrary measures made up on the fly. If you don't like them, push back, speak out, propose an alternative, make your voice heard. Yeah, and I'll show you exactly what happened yesterday as well across the world. Here's Mrs. Polyev and Mr. Polyev and a friend out on a patio having a drink. So there you go. And he says freedom. So I don't know, pseudo freedom, I guess, kind of freedom. Freedom would be sitting at the bar inside, I think, unmasked with all other patrons around you unmasked, maybe a guy on a guitar, right? Having a go at some bad bar tunes, right? Anyway, Kevin Stewart says, call me crazy, but when public health measures have people marching in the streets protesting, it's an epic fail for public health. Here's an epic fail for public health. Here's UK. This is London. This is wild. That's a lot of people in London. This is yesterday. People aren't happy. And here's a bird's eye view for London. Right? People aren't happy. It's pretty incredible. The number of people. They've zoomed out a little bit. It's a lot of people. That is a lot of people. I fear protests don't work. I've watched. Here's Luxembourg. I watched the protests for the Yellow Vests in France, right? And all 2018, 2019. Yellow Vest was a big thing. We had the United We Roll tour and in Canada, and the Yellow Vests here. Gilets jaunes in France and sometimes around Quebec. And what happened? Nothing. Nothing happened. Macron didn't step down. Nothing happened. The police cracked down and they said, don't do that. And the people said, we don't feel represented. And nothing happened. And that just, like, how does that work, right? Nothing happened. Nothing happened. I fear that despite the lots of protests around Canada and Ontario, that nothing will happen. Even around the world, that nothing will happen. Here's a picture. I don't know where this is from. I don't think it's from Canada, but it might be. That doesn't look Canadian back in this background here, does it? I haven't seen anything like that. Maybe it's train bridges. I don't know. Anyway, it says a new strain of bullshit and a third wave of propaganda. Could be Canada. Could be. I don't know. Here's Toronto. This is Queen's Park. I'll show you just a bit of footage.
You came for our jobs.
Lots of people.
To drain our safety.
Here's another one, Toronto. There was a protest. You gotta love Toronto with the techno beats, right? Like, we're protesting and we're having a little dance party. It's cool. Houston, we have a problem with the science table. Ford Nation, C. Elliott, Bonnie Crombie, John Tory. Pretty normal people there, don't you think? And there's lots of people again. This is just, This is Eaton Center. This is Yonge and I don't know which Yonge and whatever. This is right by the Eaton Center. I know my Toronto geography. And yeah, lots and lots of people. This is Calgary, right? This guy says biggest crowd of people kind I've ever seen at one of these. Yeah, Calgary is sparsely populated. So when you get a lot of people doing that in Calgary, that's a lot. And this is why it's difficult to protest in Canada. Even if you have a lot of people, it's like, it doesn't look like that many people, right? But that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Make no mistake. Whitby, Ontario had protests, right? A lot of people. People are not happy about this, and they're saying something, right? When this is Switzerland, I guess. So sorry, I thought I was going to finish in Canada, but we went a little international to finish off. But it's everywhere. People are not happy with what's going on. People don't feel represented. They don't feel that what's going on. A year later, and this is all we've got? You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be joking. No way, right? This is extending the time between vaccine doses leaves high-risk seniors feeling like sacrificial lambs. I've said this before quite consistently. The value proposition for me, if all that is included is the vaccine, like is health from the and safety from COVID-19, the value proposition is not very good. Somebody says to me, listen, if you take this vaccine, you're still going to have to be isolated. You're still going to have to wear a mask. The vaccine might give you symptoms, and we're still going to have to test you just like we always did, because the vaccine doesn't stop you giving or getting the virus, and it doesn't really stop you getting it. It just might reduce your symptoms. So roll up your arm for this 2-shot course of expensive vaccine for a virus that has a 99% survival rate. Now, what might change the value proposition is if they said you're going to be locked in your room forever until you get the vaccine or you die. That might change the value proposition for me, right? And I think that that's the point. I think that that is what they're trying to do. And they're trying to do that not just for people in long-term care, not just for people who, when they control the ministry, they control exactly the living experience for those people. Do you want somebody like that controlling your life in your house? Because that's what's happening for people in long-term care and ministry guidelines. And they can't even take a shower, according to some anecdotal evidence that I've seen. Right? So, I don't know. Why would you take this? Add to all of this the vaccine adverse events. And I keep calling it a vaccine because that's the vernacular that's used in the news. I don't even understand how they can call it a vaccine. Can you call anything a vaccine? Is there any kind of rules on what is called a vaccine in Canada? Can I say, like, I've developed this vaccine, and they say, listen, that's pen ink. And I say, yeah, but it's a vaccine. I'm pretty sure that it'll help with something. I understand it's more stringent than that, right? Like, you can't just load a syringe with watered down pen ink and say, no, it's very, very effective. All of these studies that I've done show that. And they say, what studies have you done? You say, oh, none yet. I'm hoping to do some on the human subjects that you forced to take my vaccine. I just don't understand the value proposition. I just don't get it. I don't understand how people can just accept that it's a vaccine, can just without question, like, okay, this is an mRNA vaccine, new technology. Maybe that's it. We've been conditioned to have the new iPhone, the new operating system, the new technology. So the new technology of a vaccine, fine, this is the new vaccine, right? People are just like, okay, I'm fine with that. So there's nothing that maybe there's just nothing that controls what the new vaccine is. I wish that there was, like, is this politics? Is this within the realm of politics now? Like, have we got to the point where we need to regulate what, and I mean, I thought that we had said in World War II that you're not allowed to experiment on humans, Nuremberg Code and all of that other stuff. And yet here we are, right? Like, we've got an mRNA vaccine, a rebranded vaccine that's never been tested on animals successfully that I know of. And here we are testing it on humans en masse, telling them, no, it's safe. And if you don't get it, actually, you just have to stay in your room forever. It's fine. It's crazy. It's crazy. How is this okay? Like them or not, vaccine passports are here. People would only be allowed to enter the province if they haven't traveled outside of those regions in the last 2 weeks, or if they've received a COVID-19 vaccine 2 weeks prior to their visit. Changing that value proposition a little bit, right? You can't travel within Canada unless you've had this vaccine, but it's okay. Everybody gets the vaccine. It's only a little experimental. Most people have had it, right? What are you worried about? You anti-vaxxer, anti-masker, what else are right-wing terrorist, right? Yeah, that's got them all. Brett Wilson. Weak men make hard times. This guy's a weak man. Weak man. Weak, Brett. He says, Qantas boss, governments to insist on vaccines for flying. Many countries require proof of various vaccinations if you wish to enter. It's a given that this will apply to many countries and airlines. Get used to it. So he's been pushing and enthusiastically vaccine passports. So somebody's greased some palms there, I'm sure. Somebody's changed his mind on that, or made what his mind is, made him speak quite forcefully about it. And I think that that's interesting to note, right? Here's one giant leap for humanity. Judge rules, says Randy Hillier. Judge rules Burlington couple don't always have to wear masks in their building. The condo corporation has serious concerns with the ruling. Oh, I'm sure they do. But basically, this is a bellwether, right? You can create your rules, but they don't supersede the rules of the land, and the rules are quite clear about exemptions, right? They're written into the law. You can't just supersede the law. Sorry about that. Here's Chris Sky having an interview with Zuby. So good job, Chris. And the interview is good. The end of the interview here is Chris says, "Listen, like if you think complying with this is going to get us out of this, if I came over to your house every week and stole the food from your table, and all you did was sit there and let me do it, do you think I'm going to stop? Like I'll just come and take more things from you, like the grasshopper and the ants, right?" If anybody's seen Ants. Okay. All right. Moving into a little bit less COVID, more politics. Here's that part buried in the middle of the speech. Now, I talked yesterday about how Aaron O'Toole was talking about during his speech that they cannot be a party that denies climate change anymore, and they have to, the debate is over, and they have to lead on energy or lead on the climate. Now, what Scheer did, I think, was smart. He tried to pivot on the climate change thing to talk about energy and tried to use that to defend Canadian oil and gas. And that plays well to the conservative base. That makes people generally happy. This speech did not make oil and gas people happy. Okay, and that's fine. But this is the part that is buried in the middle of this, and he's talking about here having a budget balanced within a decade. I don't know about that. Sure, 10 years to balance the budget. That's just nearly 2.5 regular terms of government. If you just put us in charge forever, we'll balance the budget. No problem. Just put us in charge for the foreseeable future, a decade. Is that too much to ask? Yes. Yes, it is. And then he goes on to talk about the nation of Quebec and the importance of maintaining Quebec culture and language. Buried right in the middle of the speech in French. A forgettable minute and a half, maybe. We're going to listen to it. Here we go. And it rose my eyebrows. I was a little bit, I was like, not in English, eh? And the translator guy is terrible. So I apologize if the translation guy gets to you. He's terrible. He's not very good. He's very halting, and it would be like me translating at my current level of French. Okay, here we go.
Very other crisis that could happen, and to return to budget harmony in the next decade. And we have to innovate. There is a Quebec nation, and the Quebec French and conservative have recognized the Quebec nation in 2006. And my Canada is the one of two founding people, and the notion must stay in the middle of the Canadian. And I want to protect the Quebec culture, its identity. The French language is not only a tool of communication, it is part of the identity of our country. And it's a heritage that we must preserve. That's why I want to ask nationalists of Quebec and sovereignists to come and share the power with me. We will have a great coalition. Since the last year, liberals profited of.
So I'll drop it there. But the Quebec nation will share power. All right. Very conservative government of you. Very, very nation building, right? Bridge building. The nation of Quebec and the rest of Canada, right? And with Aaron O'Toole as a power-sharing prime minister. I mean, why not just keep Trudeau? At least you know what you're getting, right? Which is, I mean, more decimation and less accountability, right? And I mean, I can't imagine Aaron O'Toole being more accountable than Trudeau, right? He'll do what Scott Moe's doing, right? Like, oh well, the best advice is this. Meanwhile, they've paid for the best advice. Like, how many medical officers of health got massive raises, right? $100,000 raises, massive money injections in the last year, and so we just listened to our medical officers of health, right, who are completely independent. Okay, here's the conservative government stance that Aaron O'Toole wants to take for climate change. Here we go.
Things consistently. 1, we all want a green future for our children. We cannot ignore the reality of climate change. The debate is over. But a conservative government will not solve this problem on the backs of working Canadians.
So the debate is over, unless you ask the caucus, the conservative delegates. They say conservative delegates reject adding climate change is real to the policy book. This has been largely panned about, like, Catherine McKenna. Here, hold on. Catherine McKenna doesn't like it. Ezra Levent says Catherine McKenna approves of Aaron O'Toole's climate plan. Just let that sink in. McKenna says it's actually really sad. Brian Mulroney is a leader on the environment. He tackled acid rain and the hole in the ozone layer head on. That was leadership. We need all political parties to stand up for the only planet we have. And efforts to get official conservative policy to recognize that climate change is real have failed. I think that's a funny headline. CTV Toronto. It is, well, that's the tweet. The headline is Conservative Party members vote down resolution to enshrine reality of climate change into policy book. But it is that rhetoric, that the way he's speaking about climate change there is like watching Michael Ignatieff or Stéphane Dion address the Liberals about some wonky fiscal thing that Harper would be more comfortable talking about, right? And probably would have done it better. It alienates the base in the same way, right? Like climate change is real, and there's no debate on that. Actually, there's quite the debate on that, sir. Have you seen the problems with the windmills in Texas recently? No? Okay. The perfect storm, or the perfect example of the green energy, which was Texas, right, with the geothermal and the windmills and all that, got decimated by minus 20 degrees. Decimated. We can't do this in Canada. This is crazy. This is crazy talk, Aaron O'Toole. And I'm glad that the people in the conservative delegates voted it down, because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't take reality into account at all. They want to tax your capital gains. Capital gains is any money you make on a house sale. So say that you buy a house for $100,000 and you sell it for $200,000. You would be charged on the $100,000 after. If you paid $100,000, that $100,000 wouldn't be taxed. But if you made $100,000, that $100,000 would be taxed, right? So instead of making $100,000, you would make the $100,000 less whatever the capital gains tax is. And oftentimes it's 50%, as high as 50%. So you just hand over $50,000, man. That was ill-gotten gains. You can't have that. You can't have that without paying taxes. Give the government their money. It's not like you pay taxes on the purchase price of the home. It's not like you pay taxes on the home every year that you occupied the home. It's not like you pay taxes on like all of your property, your energy bills and everything while you maintain the home. You have to pay taxes on the sale of it too. I'm sorry about your luck. I'm sorry that you put all of that into your house and now you have to give us 50% of the appreciation of that cost or of that asset. But you do because we're the government and we're here to help. Right? Here is the the foreign diplomats arriving at the Michael Spavor trial. China has denied entry to diplomats from 8 countries, or 10 diplomats from 8 countries. China has denied entry to everyone. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by that, right? Are you? I can't imagine China like suddenly just being cooperative, right? It's not like them. Happy anniversary, everyone. Pierre Poilievre says on the 19th. It's the 21st today. He said it's been exactly 2 years and $1 trillion without a budget. And this is a 2-minute video.
Happy anniversary, everyone. It's been 2 full years since.
Yeah, 2 full years. I feel like that's enough to bring the government down. I also feel like that's not going to happen. Why? Because everybody is on board with exactly what's going on. Like, by everybody, I mean everybody, right? Everybody's on board with this, right? Budget, yeah, if you've got time and the expertise, put it together whenever you can. 2021-ish, if you can, be great. 2022 if you can't, right? 3 years without a budget is just like 2 years without a budget with 1 year of experience. Right. It's terrible. I'm making a joke, but it's terrible, right? Here's a good example of like the economic changes that have happened in 2 years. 2 years ago, you could quote a building job in Canada and be okay to receive that lumber at the quoted rate, right? Like how much does this many cords of lumber cost? Is that how you measure lumber? Whatever. And they would say this much, and you say great. Now, Bruce Fenton says our local lumber yard prices have risen so fast lately that we can't quote accurately. So now we have moved to weekly price quotes. If you are a builder and need an estimate for your customer, that lumber estimate is now only good for a week. Federal inflation says inflation is 2.2%. Sure it is, right? Just try and buy some lumber, right? Good luck. Housing prices? Yeah, right. Housing is going to be a thing of the past, right? Like housing in a house with like a backyard and stuff? No. They'll build large buildings to house people, and they'll lock you in your rooms. And the ministry will say you're not allowed to walk in the empty hallways. And somebody will say you're not allowed to have a shower even once a week. Why? Because they can. Because we're letting this happen. 10 to 20%. Okay, these are a couple of stories that they didn't quite fit, and I wanted to talk about them anyway, so I'm going to talk about them. Gender therapy is an increase of 12,000% since 2010. 10 to 20% of children in government care in British Columbia are classified as needing gender therapy. That's an increase of 12,000% since 12,500% since 2010. Here's a piece. I don't have a link to this. Oh, yes, I do. Here it is. Here's the link. And this is information regarding a school in BC socially transitioning a child from one gender to another gender without informing the parents, and talking about a doctor that is advising parents to exaggerate claims of self-harm or suicide ideation to get the doctor to agree to gender transition therapy. And it goes on to say if it's true, so it's speculative. Talking about Dr. Wong and his claim. So he claims that he has 501 orphans and foster children clients. And that claim is the claim that's if true. And if it's true, they say that between 10 and 20% of children in government care in British Columbia are classified as needing gender therapy. So that's the 12,500% claim. But that's concerning, because those are the people who are supposed to be taking care of kids. And regardless of if kids are in care or not, they still deserve to be cared for well. They still deserve that dignity. So, I mean, we've got examples of our systems locking elderly people into their rooms because they might get sick for your safety. And we've got examples of doctors claiming that they have 501 orphans and foster children clients that they're helping to transition their genders. That seems like a lot of people. That seems like a study, doesn't it? That seems like a what happens if, right? That seems like we should follow that group of people, right? To see what happens as they move forward, to have an idea of how this potentially impacts humans, right? But if that's true, I don't know. Who knows what's true these days? It's very hard to discern. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and it was it was at the park. And struck up a conversation with somebody while my son was playing and their son or daughter was playing, and we were talking about the vaccine, and it got to ivermectin, and I said, well, I think it's weird that we've got these vaccines where we don't have good information like 5 years out, 10 years out about what happens to these vaccines. I said, but we can't use like hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, like where we do have data 5 and 10 years out of people who have been on these drugs for extended periods and been okay, like, but we don't have that. I said, I think that it's weird. And regardless of what your choice is, was how I was arguing it. It seems odd that the zeitgeist, that the medical professionals, the politics, the media, the ads, they're all saying vaccine good and ignoring HCQ and ivermectin. And if they can't ignore it, they say, oh no, well, that's not studied and we can't do that. Right? Like very quick, just no, we're not doing that. I think that that's odd. I think that that's notable. I think that that's something to pay attention to. But you can't. And she said, has the HCQ been proven? And I was like, well, I said, nothing's been proven. Nothing. I said, not even the vaccines have been proven. Like they say that X, Y, Z, but they said masks work too. And they're lying about that. So I said, what's true? How do you discern what's true? Right? You have to decide for yourself. And that's why I try not to tell you what's true. I try and tell you why I think what I think. Right? This is the conclusion I've come to because of these things. That's all. That's all we can have, I guess. Right? And so, concerning what's going on in the world, concerning and worrying. This I thought was super cool. A good news story to end the day. It doesn't work if the water freezes. The only moving part is the turbine in here. But you basically just cut out beside a river, right? Cut out beside a river and move the water and like install this thing. Here's the turbine and the river flowing in to there, whatever, turns the turbine and you connect up the electricity or the wires to get the electricity to where you want it to. But as that turbine's churning, electricity is being created. Super cool. I don't know how many houses it could power. There it is. That's the overview, right? So river, water's diverted. Forgot the word. And creates power. I would love to have a house like right here, just like bam, right? Just because I think stuff like that's super cool. I would also like to have a diesel generator backup for if the river freezes, right? Like, but stuff like this is so smart. It seems so obvious. Like when you have a windmill, not a windmill, a water mill powering like a grain mill or something like that inside or whatever. Something like this, once you figure electricity out, it seems like the obvious next step. But we were like, you know what's better? Oil and gas. Oil and gas is great because it's potable, right? Like you can take a can of gasoline and fill up your snowmobile and then drive away, right? Like if your snowmobile runs out of charge in the bush, you're not plugging into a bush, right? Like you hope you have your gasoline can. But even if you have an extra battery, if it's really frozen, good luck at working, right? Like, but the gasoline works, right? So I like oil and gas. Let's have oil and gas backups. Okay, this is the last one. In Calgary, there's this, and I don't know where this fits, but it fits, I guess. Who's behind the anti-guidebook ads in Calgary? So there's this guidebook thing, and they're trying to redefine the neighborhoods into something that people are not happy with. And so this group looked into the people who are against the plan. And they say the website is cloaked in shadowy anonymity, saying only that it's organized and sponsored by individual Calgarians with no prior affiliation other than the love of the already great communities in which they've chosen to live. They try and find out who started running these advertorials and are trying to shame them, basically, because they disagree and they're trying to gain support and to have the conversation. I just think it's so weird to see Canada going into this level of political discord. Like the powers that be have usurped control and people are pushing back to try and take that control back, and all other assets are being turned on to fight that and to silence anybody who dissents. And this is a microcosm of what's happening across Canada for almost every issue. The injection sites, safe injection sites, same thing, right? We had a 242% increase yesterday, and I talked about it yesterday, in overdoses in Guelph in 2020. And you know what they did? Let's open up a new safe injection site. A 242% increase from 2019 to 2020. And they say, this worked so well, let's do it again. Let's open up another one. Morons, idiots, fools. And so if you try and tell them that, they'll call you a white supremacist terrorist, right? They'll say, we've got him. He's evil because he's got a YouTube channel and he talks about things. Okay, you got me. Oh no. Anyway, I think it's wild, and I think it's crazy what we're living through. I think that all of this stuff, like just looking, like the protests, right? Like what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Is anybody going to care? I don't know. I don't think so. John Tory doesn't care. Doug Ford doesn't care, right? Justin Trudeau doesn't care. So what's the next move? If you're on a chessboard, what's the next move? The kings are isolated, insulated, protected. What's the next move? I don't know. I don't know what the next move is. But it seems like complying is the wrong move. So I'm going to make sure that, I'm going to make sure that I keep talking about what's going on and not listening to people who tell me to stop. So there you go. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.